Hello everyone, welcome. Welcome to the Dunlop Art Gallery. My name is Alyssa Farron and I'm the director and curator of Dunlop Art Gallery. So welcome to the artist talk for Riisa, and we're opening the exhibition In My Skin. So before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that we are here on Treaty 4 territory, which is the original lands of the Cree, Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. I'm grateful to be a guest here on Treaty 4 territory. I was born and raised on Treaty 13 territory, also known as Scarborough, Ontario. My own roots extend to the African continent and the Caribbean island of Jamaica, which is the indigenous homeland of the Taino peoples. So now I'm going to pass things off to Wendy Pierce, curator of education and outreach, who will introduce Riisa and the talk.
Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Wendy. Welcome to this artist talk tonight and the opening reception. Following the talk, we will enjoy their exhibition and reception upstairs in the gallery space. Just a little bit about the exhibition. It's entitled In My Skin and features the work of Ella Cooper, Dana Danger, Vanessa Dion-Fletcher, Riisa Gundesen, Jay Kovach, Chantel Miller, and Zoe Schneider. This exhibition speaks to the intention to establish ownership and autonomy over one's own body in all of its wondrous complexities, including how it is represented, presented, seen, treated, cared for, loved, and respected. Tonight, we will hear from Riisa Gundesen in her artist talk called Toilets, Ritual and Anxiety in My Bathroom. Riisa Gundesen, she, her, is an early career artist specializing in figurative painting. Her practice deals with self-portraiture and still life, exploring topics such as personal narrative, the abject, femininity, and mental illness. Her work has shown in numerous galleries and artist-run centers across Canada, including 3 solo exhibitions in 2019 at Gallery Gachet in Vancouver, Harcourt House in Edmonton, and ArtsPLACE Gallery in Annapolis Royal, Nova Scotia. She has also been featured in such publications as Galleries West and the Capilano Review. Gundesen received her BFA from the University of Lethbridge in 2012 and her MFA from the University of Saskatchewan in 2017. She currently teaches painting and drawing at the University of Alberta. Welcome, Riisa.
Thanks, Wendy. And yeah, thanks to the Dunlop Gallery and for having me, and Wendy for curating me into this show. Very, very exciting. Lots of really great artists that I'm showing with here. Yeah, so let's see. I want to start by going back just a little bit to some earlier work than the cutouts that I'm showing in the gallery upstairs, which are still a bit kind of new and experimental. So a little bit of context just relating to sort of my master's work back in 2017 and kind of the series that evolved out of that. So the master's show was a series of self-portrait tableau addressing the concept of femininity as a marginal, unstable state requiring ongoing regulation, an ongoing performance to be reprised over and over, reinforcing the boundaries of that state. So the concept kind of draws on theorist Linda Need's writings on the position of the female nude in art history. She says, despite its popularity in the Western art canon, the nude is unstable and dangerous. She writes that it's nevertheless always under threat, for it stands at the edge where it risks losing its respectability and spilling out and over into pornography. Therefore, it must be constantly patrolled, guarded against internal and external threat. So she uses this language around purity and contamination, where within boundaries there is safety, while marginal, indefinite states are dangerous. So I began with this sort of format of the boudoir or the toilette, common to European painting, where the nude courtesan goddess is caught in this act of passive and available performance. Despite the ostensible privacy of the space, the viewer always catches her in a moment of sort of appealing coquetry, implying the importance of that ongoing performance for this imagined omnipresent viewer. So I was approaching the format through self-portraiture, as I say, and personal narrative, and I was painting these large tableaux from reference photos taken within my own intimate spaces, initially the bedroom. So references for the first kind of 4 paintings or so in the series were taken from that space after a stretch of mild depression. So the space was full of clutter and mess, even garbage and rotten food. So the idea was kind of, firstly, like a way of sort of literalizing Mead's metaphor of permeable margins, of instability inherent to the female nude. So the contagion of all the kind of detritus. Let's see if I can point. No, it doesn't work very well. The contagion of all the detritus abutting and threatening to pollute the figure, and then the body itself losing its integrity with these faltering contours, dissolving into color fields and more two-dimensional forms. Then it was also intended to just explore the grotesque, the abject inherent to the intimacy of these types of spaces. So the proximity to the body, leaving necessarily these traces of garbage, dirty clothes, blood stains, drool, shed hairs. Then a little later on in 2017, in the spring, while I was sort of in the middle of writing my graduate thesis, a change in one of my prescriptions caused some really terrible mood swings and culminated in a couple months of severe depression and the type of sort of relentless, distressing, intrusive thoughts that I'd experienced as a teenager and a younger adult. And in that kind of state of mind, I was reading for the first time French-Bulgarian philosopher Julia Kristova's essay, Pouvoir de l'horreur, Powers of Horror. And I felt this very kind of deep but unsettling connection to her first chapter, which offers a description of the abject in relation to the self, the bodily. Kristova describes this kind of entanglement of something where it shouldn't be, that pollutes and can't be excised. So many of the later paintings in the show and the series that I created afterwards drew a great deal on her metaphor of food rejection. She uses food rejection as sort of the inciting incident of abjection. She describes the sort of le pot du lait, the skin that forms on warm milk, which I think she found very disgusting. And the sensation in response to that of like the rising gorge provoked by the sight, smell, or taste of spoiled food. You sort of envision in that moment of nausea what would happen if the rot would touch your lips, your throat, and the kind of retching, vomiting, evacuation that would ensue. That represents, she says, a literal act of abjection, of casting away the polluting, dangerous thing from yourself. So according to Kristova, the development from childhood to adulthood involves a series of casting off, of abjecting all things that are other in order to clarify, the ego, the self. Then this process of objecting arrives finally at the problem of the corpse, which must necessarily be contained within the living self and cannot be thrown off, abjected, excised. And so that existential confrontation with contamination that is inescapable. So yeah, in this kind of tricky state of mind that I was in, this concept, those feelings and sensations really seemed to align with the way I was experiencing mental distress. I thought of the intrusive thought always lurking, this sort of desire to poke at it and to see if it was still as bad as I remembered, and the inability to excise it. That sense of contamination, of nausea, this rotting thing, gave me a means of trying to make sensate a more insensate feeling or distress. So yeah, working certainly with the rotting food, and then I was interested in harnessing the sensations of the abject to cause sensation in the viewer. So trying to create a feeling in their bodies, that they should look at the paintings, at my body, the nude, and feel that kind of clenching in the stomach, that shiver in the back or wetness in the mouth, and in that way become aware of their own bodies. And also then to feel something akin to the things I was feeling and be drawn into my personal narrative through those sensations. So I was emphasizing, as in the previous slide there, grotesque sort of still life elements, such as putrefying food left in my fridge for too long, as well as these compositions that zoomed in on like the orifices, the permeable margins of the face, but made like massive and confrontational by the scale. Caught in these faces, like caught in the moment of eating or potentially retching. Like just for a sense of scale, like this one I think was one of the biggest in that initial series, and that one's about 68 inches tall, 68 by 51. So yeah, the face is extremely large and the figure is sort of roughly life size. After graduation, I sort of continued in this vein for a little while, expanding on the initial concept and creating sort of a larger series there, partly just for practicality concerns. I had the work in some overlapping shows, so I needed to produce a bunch of new work within the same vein. So I could have a couple exhibitions running simultaneously, which was a little bit constraining in some ways, but I do think it led to some valuable developments in the way I was addressing figure and ground and sort of thinking about the concepts in general. There's a bit of a sense of scale there. The later works in the series took more care and attention to the still life elements, including in the tableau, situating them as a bit more prominent and like competing with the figure for attention, rather than the expressive, more abstract treatment that they were getting in earlier works. I wanted to increase the sense of kind of jarring juxtaposition between the intimacy, the safety of the home, and then the peripheral, rotting, invasive thing encroaching on the domestic and also the figure. There's a close up on these are pears, I think, some really nasty pears. Continuing to work from photographic references within my home space. But as the work evolved, my approach to sort of the compositions and the references, the way I was creating those references changed a bit. A lot more staging, sometimes in a way that read as fairly deliberate, as in this piece with kind of the dying flowers, the rotting food set very particularly on the table, or sometimes a bit more kind of organic, but not so much like the straightforward documentation of the space from the earlier pieces. More sort of constructed scenes that might be recreations of particular events, or more just sort of an impression of a particular space, a particular circumstance I might imagine could happen in the given space. These are all still self-portraits, but sometimes employing multiple references to create a doubled or tripled figure. Again, sort of disrupting the boundaries of the body, playing with the sense of perspective, and then suggesting perhaps sort of a splitting of the self with conflicting emotions and hidden faces. I don't know if that's slide 12 or 13. Okay, let's go with that one. So then I began using my bathroom as the chief environment for kind of the last few pieces in this series that I painted. It was just sort of a natural choice initially as I was exploring different sites within the home. And I thought the bathroom was interesting, kind of as the site of the maintenance of femininity, a place where the rituals of beautifying, of making sort of, in quotes, presentable the feminine body in various ways might take place, both in reality as well as in the popular consciousness. I like the relationship of the space, I like the kind of possibility of the space as like a dressing room in a theater, a staging area for the putting on and taking off of a costume. I was also interested in focusing on the bathroom as a site sort of mystery, of secret knowledge. I remember as a child having this really kind of intense private fascination around all the items my mother had in her bathroom. I would sneak in there sometimes to like look at all her lotions and makeup and hairstyling brushes, hair dryers. But for whatever reason, it felt very taboo to me, like it was too private to ask her about these items and what they might be used for. And I remember feeling similarly, sort of like there was this mystery around her body, like when we went swimming or we were at the beach. I remember noticing the way she shaved her legs, which I think at the time was quite popular to women of her generation, just up to the knee and no further. And I remember very viscerally this feeling of sitting in her lap and noting kind of the prickliness of her lower legs and the soft curly hair on her upper legs, and sort of wondering with like curiosity, maybe a little distaste, if that's something that would happen to me, or if she did this to herself in some way, and why she would do that. So I was interested in conveying that sense of intense like privacy, taboo, and ambiguity in these bathroom scenes and rituals, that they should be suggestive but not really easy to pin down, more this kind of slightly ethereal, imagined ritual performance that kind of aligned more with a feeling, maybe prompted by a specific object, beauty accessories, outfits that I would treat as kind of costumes. And then when I was a little older, so I was also thinking about my experience as a teenager, a young adult in the bathroom space, at which point, of course, it was, all these sorts of things were less mysterious to me, but my feelings about the space became strangely obsessive in a different way. I think it was often the site of intrusive thoughts, of panic attacks, probably because sort of distractions and coping mechanisms available sort of outside among people were not so much in like the isolation of the shower or doing whatever ablutions. And I began developing a lot of like really compulsive coping habits, frequently picking at skin and hair and zits and scabs. These activities felt very soothing, satisfying in the moment, but then the damage caused to my skin and face became distressing afterwards. And it prompted like this development of a very complicated series of obsessive, complex, multi-step grooming rituals in the service of sort of covering up and creating an acceptable public face. So I would spend hours and hours in the bathroom, washing and scouring with soaps and sponges and acne creams and spot treatments, and then layers of makeup, foundation, blemish, cover stick. I have very visceral memories of the sensations of all the layers of like creams and makeup, the sort of itchy, greasy weight of it throughout a school day, then coming home to take it all off, and then repeating the whole process over again if I had somewhere to go in the evening. So thinking of that, I've been working with like the really thick textural areas of the paint, a lot of some just straight up kind of dried and picked away paint, and then a lot of like cold wax mediums to get a higher like volume on those textures. So I've been dealing with that for a while, but at this point I began to connect it very specifically with those kind of compulsive behaviors. The thick wax that is peeled back, painted over, reworked, and kind of gouged into again and again until it crumbles apart. I didn't want it to depict like really literally this sort of what I guess amounts to sort of mild self-harm that felt too personal, but also like somewhat violent towards the viewer. So I like the sort of suggestive quality of the paint and the wax, but sort of, I hope the kind of pleasure of the colors, the media, the abstraction it takes on just softens it a little bit. And then, so this is the kind of the final painting of that large tableau series that I painted probably, yeah, it would have been early 2020, just before the pandemic dropped, for a little pop-up show in Edmonton. And with this one, I was thinking about paying a bit more attention to like particular commercial products associated with the bathroom, bath and beauty items, makeup products, masks, skin treatments. I did a few smaller mask studies in oil and watercolor, and then this kind of came out of those. I was thinking about the shift during the time I've been a consumer of these types of products, from strictly beauty product into lifestyle brand, where the item is marketed not just to sort of address whatever, alleged issue with the physical body, but as part of this larger wellness ritual routine, where mental wellness specifically is often addressed. I think especially during COVID, I was noticing the shift where you would see like lifestyle websites go from skincare tips to listicles on reducing anxiety, and a lot of emphasis on languages, like language around mindfulness, meditation, self-care. There's definitely something a bit insidious there that I wanted to explore further. Both the idea of like, further commercializing mental health, and then the fusion of beauty and healthcare into this wellness industry, the implication that the 6-step skincare routine might be the key to curing your mental illness. In this piece, this is Three Graces. Again, the self-portrait, but with kind of like the tripled self. So the gold foil mask becomes a prominent motif. Visually, I like it for the ways it can be positioned at once as like an attractive, covetable commercial object. The gold, the glitter, there's a great like aesthetic pleasure there, and like an aesthetic pleasure that is mirrored in the sort of material pleasure of the gold paint. But then it easily, I think, shifts to something more sinister, draped over the edge of the tub with like the empty eyes, the gaping mouth, resembling a skull, a sort of mask of skin, or transforming the face into something eerie, a little bit sort of that uncanny valley, maybe a little bit of that fear of the corpse, tying back to Kristova's ultimate abjection. Thinking about these types of projects as signifiers of sort of collective societal fears around desirability, aging, death, both kind of like positioned as sort of a panacea against such anxieties, as well as a creeping reminder. So I stumbled a bit onto the project I'm working on now, this cutout project up in the upstairs gallery space. Yes, so I kind of stumbled into it a little bit. Initially, for very practical reasons, I moved the big tableau from canvas to rag paper. Just because you can roll 5 big paintings into a big tube and ship them rather than building a giant crate. So it was kind of a practicality thing. And then I was trying out different types of paper, and I had a bit of a lull in showing when COVID came along. And so it was a good time for experimentation. So this was the first piece where I tried working with oil on prepared Yupo paper, which it's a polypropylene paper, very like flexible. In this case, this one was painted on a translucent paper. I was really pleased with like it's a bit of a different quality of mark you get with it. But then also the sort of quality of edge, the resilience of the surface prompted me to try cutting out pieces of the painting. And then that led to cutting out the entire figure or still life. And there's one of the first examples of that I tried out there. Little bit of a trial installation there. So with this new work, I guess the broad idea has been to play with the possibility of a kind of immersive installation, continuing to focus around the bathroom and the wellness product, but perhaps allowing kind of this creeping of the bathroom space into a given presentation space with things draping 3-dimensionally on the walls, hanging over plinths, even dripping onto floors. The draping, hanging paintings, I think further maybe suggesting like a discarded costume, an empty skin, and then the cutting out, divorcing these objects from context to give them a little more ambiguity to their nature, their purpose. I think there's something there that I'm continuing to explore about my sort of sometimes ambiguous feelings about the sort of putting on of femininity. Like there's this interest I feel in a lot of these products, playing with makeup and skin treatments. There's sort of a consumer desirability, but then sort of paired with this equal desire to sometimes be able to take off those trappings, put them away for a little while, treat it more like a costume that I could play with again later. A few more kind of trial install shots I was doing. With the cutting out of the pieces too, I was thinking of trying to push the perception of the still life, especially as things, as products, as objects of consumption. Like within one of the big tableaus, they're part of this kind of illusionistic environment. But cut out, I'm trying to push the feeling of both that kind of consumer pleasure in the beautiful object, but also to locate it as a product, as like this object of consumption. In this case, this is a bath bomb still in sort of foil packaging. So when choosing these compositions, creating references, definitely still some of the narrative I was exploring earlier is there, relating to kind of childhood feelings around the bathroom, suggesting the performance of some sort of slightly ambiguous ritual in the bathroom space, thinking back to that childhood conception of the mystery there, and my belief at the time that something secret, taboo, might be taking place within, whose exact nature remains speculative. The sort of way I feel like I found out about a lot of these items was sort of through this kind of pre-early internet osmosis, whether that was through like whispers among friends, or maybe one of those like puberty books that were given to some of us when we reached teenagehood, containing these sort of obscure but what seemed like highly important rules about what rituals had to be enacted and how and when. So I kind of like the interpretation of the cutouts depending on the viewer's experience of the various products. So if the viewer has some experience of a particular object, they may recognize the reference, but others may, who, if they don't have that experience, may interpret the paintings as perhaps more abstract, more sort of visually ambiguous. In some of the pieces, changes in scale or decontextualization creates confusion. Like with so these two, the one on the, here, I point, oh, there we go, pointing a little bit. This one here, this is a lip mask, but much larger and very sort of decontextualized from the face, and then the texture creates a bit of ambiguity. Or in this piece, the context is kind of lost or unclear. It's a face mask that I stuck to the mirror with its own gloop, and then painted parts of my reflection in the mirror through the mask. But a lot of that context is, of course, kind of lost with the cutting out of the image. Let's see. With the toilet, there's again, like it's a clear what the object is, but the relationships of the various elements are a little unclear. So the drape form over the seat may or may not be recognizable as underwear. So potentially a relationship to the toilet paper and menstrual blood in the bowl. But then the makeup sponges are, again, these objects that maybe you don't recognize, especially if you don't have any familiarity with them, and difficult to know what they are without reading that in the title. In other cases, I kind of select some of these items by wandering up and down just the drugstore aisle. So I may not myself have a perfect idea of what they're for. With the pink gloves in this piece, I had thought initially that they must be, I thought you were supposed to maybe moisturize your hands and then put the gloves on top to keep the moisture in. But then one of my studio mates saw the piece and explained that they're actually like exfoliating gloves. So I guess you're supposed to kind of rub them all over yourself like a face cloth or something. So I like that result, that I'm not necessarily using the product toward its intended purpose, but sort of intuitively imagining the ritual to go with the relic. Yeah, and then in kind of the most recent cutouts, I'm pushing the scale a little again. This one is roughly life size. And I'm considering how to incorporate possibly some of the architecture of the bathroom into the cutouts, trying to get that sense of the space itself, the intimacy of that space. I'll be showing the work in a solo exhibition for the first time in like March 2023. So that's kind of where the research is going now, is trying to figure out how to deal with it in terms of like filling the gallery space, and how to like keep that sense of the place I'm trying to evoke this feeling of, whether that's continuing with sort of a lot of the individual cutouts, or incorporating some aspect of the tableau back in there to get this sense of that particular place. Yeah. I'm not sure how we're doing for time, but I think that's probably a good spot to leave it at.
We can do questions now.
Sure.
Okay, so now's the time when we are going to take some questions for Riisa. We can take questions from the audience. Okay, great. I see one over here. So I'm going to pass the mic on to whomever has the question, so that our online audience can also hear the question.
Hello. Some of your pieces with the multiple faces superimposed bear at least some kind of resemblance to the like the work of the futurists around the turn of the century. Is that coincidental, or what would you say to that?
I think mostly coincidental. I'm kind of aware of the futurists, but yeah, like that's an interesting interpretation, not necessarily one I had in mind though.
Good question. Anybody else have another question? Kara.
My name is Kara, and I was wondering for the art picture, like North Piers. Want to know how you made it.
Sorry, which one were you wondering how I made?
The North Piers.
Oh, like one of the big face ones?
Yes.
So those ones are pretty straightforward, just kind of oil on canvas. So it's sometimes I'll do a bit of an acrylic underpainting just to get some colors down, and then oil painting on top.
Oh, okay. I just wondered. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Carol.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Kara. Anybody else? Do we have anything online, Eric? No? Okay. Yes, okay, I'll come on. Should have worn my runners.
Thank you. Hello. My name is Nulay. I was just wondering about how you came about choosing, I guess, the sequence in which you presented all the pieces to us today. The one bathroom scene was quite shocking, actually, I guess. So, how did you come about that one specifically and choosing it to become part of your exhibit?
So in terms of just the sequence of images here, it's mostly chronological, just kind of discussing the trajectory there. Yeah, there's a, were you thinking of like the three people in the like the three figures in the
Yeah.
tub.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one, I included, it's not actually included in the show upstairs, it's all the cutouts in the show upstairs. I included that one because it was the last painting in this kind of series of larger tableau. And the first where I was kind of using a bit more of these kind of like props with the face masks and the sort of wellness products in that way.
Hi there. I noticed in a number of the earlier works, there's the presence of a cell phone. It's usually used as a subject holding the cell phone, and then that kind of mirrored surface evolves to become either a bathroom mirror or some other reflective surface in the works. And I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about that, if that was an evolution we were aware of, or if we're intended to register the cell phone as having a particular kind of meaning in those works.
Sure, yeah. I think I think it was just, now I'm thinking back to the grad show. I think it was just those first two where I literally had the cell phone or the camera in there. I think at the time I was just it had to do with the way I was thinking about sort of the nature of like looking and looking back, as well as making kind of clear the self-portrait intention. Like the first two were titled, I think, Selfie Number 1 and Selfie Number 2. And then after that, I think I probably decided it was a bit too on the nose, and then moved on to other ways of expressing that, such as the mirror. And then with the mirror too, I could get more of the kind of doubling and tripling of the figure within the composition. So it just was sort of a more effective tool.
Thank you. Got one in the back here. Where do you find inspiration? And if followed up by, what are some of the upcoming projects you're working on?
In terms of inspiration, I mean, a lot of it is a bit internal. Certainly with the new work, I have just been, like looking for weird products that I can think of some kind of interesting, I don't know, whether it's like a little narrative that's just happening in my head, or just like, oh, this is visually interesting. How can I kind of put this together into a composition that I like? And then in terms of projects I'm working on right now, so the cutouts are kind of the latest thing that I'm working on. And the goal at the moment is to create more of them, potentially some larger elements, to kind of create sort of like a full show with them. And then I'll be showing them, I think their first solo show is going to be in 2023 at Eastern Edge in St. John's. And so that's kind of the what I'm dealing with in terms of creating new work at the moment. And then I'm just doing a short, or a mid-length, a residency in Saskatoon with the Bridges Art Movement in May and June. So I'm going to be spending some time in that space, trying to sort through some of the problems I've been thinking of in terms of installation, and how I want to kind of address the rest of the work in terms of creating this larger exhibition.
Okay, so we can put our hands up first. I don't mind Margaret's here first. Margaret can go first since you're there. I'll pass it over.
Thanks so much for the talk tonight. I really love the materiality and the scale of your work. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about some of your painting heroes, whether someone like Jenny Salgado or
definitely in terms of like who I was looking at as I became a more mature painter, like through my schooling, like definitely I was shown like Jenny Saville and Freud and Bacon, kind of all the standards you would expect there. I think definitely like not a painter, but Tracy Emin was a big influence in grad school. Like I definitely like her bed was a pretty direct inspiration for some of the earlier pieces there. And I really like the way she kind of addresses the personal with like just like force feeding you too much information. Yeah.
So, hi Riisa.
Hi Zoe.
So I'm just kind of curious, the cutouts have been kind of removed from the context of the picture plane, and you very much like are a painter and are very interested in medium and how to work with that picture plane. So has it been like a challenge or rewarding or something that's kind of forcing you to approach your medium in a different way as it's become almost more of a sculptural sort of play?
Yeah, it's been interesting. Like it's definitely a problem that I'm still kind of trying to solve. I think when I first started them, like I was saying, it was kind of right when the pandemic hit, so I had some time for experimentation, and I'd been doing the big tableaus for a few years at that point, and I was kind of ready to diverge from that. So that felt like a good way to take it. But yeah, like I'm still trying to, like, I like the individual pieces. I like what they can do. I like the kind of different challenges they pose, but figuring out a way to make it work in a show, figuring out a way to kind of capture the intimacy of the space, maybe just the types of composition that I'm interested in this new format is definitely still something I'm trying to figure out a way that is working for me.
Thank you.
Okay, so I just had one last question, or if there's more, we can take more, but I do have a question about, obviously this is all about, it's been self-portraiture. Has it always been self-portraiture? And if not, have you tried presenting or representing other subjects in your figurative work? And if so, what has that been like for you?
I've been working exclusively with self-portrait for a while now. And I mean, a lot of that is just kind of a function of the material because it's such like a personal story. It makes sense in that way. And there's also like there is sort of like a violence to the figure in certain ways that I don't know if it would read as well if I was using models. Prior to that, like I would say this has been my first like the previous body of work, and then this has kind of been like my first professional body of work. The rest of it was in undergrad. I had worked with models. I had worked with like found references and different things like that. But yeah, the self-portrait format I found really worked for kind of the concepts I wanted to deal with. I think if I did diverge away from self-portraiture, like it would be to address different concepts, I think. And if I was working with other like models, other bodies, there might have to be more of sort of like a collaborative approach there, I suppose. At the moment, I think the most likely thing is maybe that I start doing gigantic still lifes or something, but we'll see where that goes.
Thanks. Anybody else? Great, so we'll see you all upstairs, hopefully, you can come up and join us at the opening reception.
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks everyone for your questions. Oh, and thanks to our sign language interpreters here
Yes,
too.
thank you.